So in today's video conference, we are going to discuss with one another your understanding of sight, what you may already know, what you've learned over the past week or two, and how sight influences the effects of the design of a building.
If we are able to design buildings which are a pleasure to be in, and especially if they create spaces which are external spaces. You know, in our part of the world, we use, of course, buildings, but some of the exciting parts are the open spaces that we have. And somehow when we design schools, or if you are, since you'll be, I think, thinking of perhaps in the subcontinent, perhaps in India and in Africa, you must also consider that outdoor spaces are equally interesting and they must be dovetailed with the building itself. Now, have you given a thought of how open spaces can be used in schools at all? The context of a site is very, very important. It depends where you're designing, for whom you're designing, and how do you site a building. So when you are thinking in terms of your school buildings or areas that you want to study in, you've got to see what it is finally for, and how can you bring the outside into the inside.
How hard is it when you're taking the needs of the people versus their culture, and how do you build a building taking both aspects in mind?
Even in Pakistan itself, there are many different groups that reside here, so there's a lot of diversity. And then the climatic conditions are such that you need to respond to those as well. Then, as we said, the site conditions are such, and cultural norms have to be taken into consideration. Because I try to save cultural heritage, so for me, traditions and culture are extremely important. And we try to see how we, weave something around those particular factors. Unless we take care of all the different requirements for the people who actually are going to use the building will not work very well. And I always say this, and I'd like to say it to you as well, that as an architect, we dream a lot, we have our concepts, and we want to do something fantastic. But what is important is to know that you are not designing for the government or the person who pays your fee, but you design for the people who will eventually use those buildings. Now, if it's a school and if kids are going to use that particular building, you have to understand what their own understanding of that building would be, how they can best get the education that they need, and again, how much extracurricular activity they can carry on through spaces that you create either as courtyards or as open spaces along with the building itself.
I was just wondering how environmental sustainability plays a role in the work you've done.
I've also tried very hard to try to respond to the conditions, especially the climatic conditions, and to use materials that are not, their production don't use too much energy.
I want to move back towards the discussion of site. Students at Westmount Charter, as you move forward with your project in Ecuador, what do you think you've learned about the importance of understanding the site in which you will be working in?
The thing that we've learned the most about going to Ecuador from Yasmeen is that we need to make sure we talk to the people of Ecuador and understand their culture before we can do any type of sustainable development, and make sure their needs at the basic and cultural levels are both met. Thank you.
We've also learned that it's going to be important that we record everything we do. So we've already thought we're going to bring journals, so I think it's going to be very important that we document our trip very well and make sure we remember and understand the environment too, so we can bring that into the building, for example. So while we're in the different parts of the country, we can consider what's important for that particular area.
For the kids that you will build for, or you will give advice to, or you will be helped to create an environment for them in which they can have a better learning kind of a situation, that itself is something great. Because in this world there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of illiteracy, there's a lot of ill health, and a lot of people do not achieve their potential because they are not able to have the resources or the opportunities through which they could develop. So I compliment you on this, and I think we all need to give you a big hand. So I don't know whether you can give a hand to yourself also. I think maybe we should do that.